Yeah, it all started by something Ernie Accorsi. He was a famous general manager in the NFL, very successful, potential Hall of Fame candidate in the future. He told ESPN's Colin Cowherd a couple of years ago that there isn't a price that's too high to pay for a quarterback, as long as that quarterback turns out to be a great franchise quarterback. It doesn't matter. Give up your whole draft, trade players. It doesn't matter what the price is. If it's a franchise quarterback, you should pay that price. When I started looking at the Mariota-Eagles connection, that came to mind, and then when I started going deeper into it, and as I did in the article, it became clear that this is one of those cases where getting Mariota could be the thing that could be a franchise quarterback and worth paying whatever price the Eagles have to pay.
So right now they sit in the 20 range. How realistic is it for them to get where they're going to need to get Mariota? I mean, I think that is as you start the piece out, that they are in a quandary here because they are pretty far down the draft board. So to break the bank for him, is there a team that's even willing to be a trade partner with you when you're at 20?
See, I'm looking at it from this perspective. Now, Tampa may just decide we're going to take Mariota, or although the rumors are that they're thinking of taking Jameis Winston. But if they decide they're going to take Mariota and they've come to the same conclusion, we think he's a franchise quarterback, there's no price that's too high to pay, then there's nothing Philadelphia can do at that point, and they have to consider other options. But if those teams are agreeable to a trade, what you're hearing is that it's going to take at least this year's one plus next year's one plus possibly Foles, and that would be just a starting point. It may be the kind of deal that the Redskins had to give up to get RG3 a couple years ago. We're giving up multiple 5 picks, I think they gave up. I mean, it might take that much to do this. And before this year, before Chip Kelly took over, it might be the sort of move that I think the Eagles personnel department probably never makes, because they're just, they're not that type of, they don't tend to make those types of moves. They don't tend to overpay for any particular draft pick or player. So, but I think under this new regime, it might be something that's doing.
Casey, let's take a look at some of the reasons why you believe this is, because some people aren't even sure about this guy. There's some talk that he could slip anyway. What is it about him that makes you make this very strong stance that they should go after him?
Well, first off, he's operated the Kelly system better than any other quarterback, and even Kelly himself has said that Mariota is Peyton Manning-like in his football knowledge. But I'll give you a couple metrics here. One is, in his 3 seasons as Oregon's quarterback, Mariota posted a total QBR mark of 80 or higher. That's an ESPN metric. It measures quarterback production. And if you're 80 or higher, that means you're in the 80th percentile. You've had a fantastic game. He did that against a major conference team on 25 occasions, and 18 of those 25 performances occurred in the last 2 years. So you're talking almost, 2/3 of the time this guy goes out there, he's putting up those kinds of numbers. So, that's the kind of upside that Kelly hasn't had in his offense here in Philadelphia, and he didn't even have that kind of upside when he was at Oregon. He got 1 year of that out of Mariota, but Mariota's played even better the 2 years after Kelly left, so I can just imagine what Kelly could do with him down the road. I think that's part of it, too, is that the Mariota-Kelly fit is perfect for paying this kind of price. If this is another team at 20, or if you're thinking of another, you're thinking of either the Jets or the Bucks, I just don't think that Mariota fits their systems nearly as well. This is a sort of Mariota-Kelly deal.
Now, obviously, the Eagles had some turnover problems at that position. Is that because of the personnel they had there? Would a better fit cut those turnovers out at that position?
Yeah, you've heard me talk before about my bad decision metric. It's a bad decision is a quarterback mental error that leads to a turnover opportunity for the opposing team. Nick Foles led the league in that metric in 2013. Last year, the Eagles quarterbacks had 16 bad decisions. To get an idea of how much of a regression that is, Foles had 2 of them in 2013, and the team has 16 in 2014. You're going to get about half of those picked off. So you probably get at least, if you have that many bad decisions, you're probably looking at least 8 interceptions, and that's before you start getting the other types of interceptions and things. You're going to be getting as many, the kinds of the volume of interceptions the Eagles are getting. And Mariota, he led the all Power 5 quarterbacks in interception percentage this year over the 3-year course, over his course of his 3-year career. He led all Power 5 quarterbacks in that metric. I mean, he's the only Pac Pac-12 quarterback to have 2 or more streaks at 200 passes without an interception. I mean, this guy protects the football extraordinarily well. So I think if they were to bring him in, even in year one, he could be a big plus in their turnover area.
One of the areas of the Eagles' passing game that I think took a step back this year, Casey, was down the field. When Foles had that 27-2 touchdown year, he seemed like he was connecting down the field. Maybe Deshaun Jackson was a big help in that. But this past year, not so successful, nor was Mark Sanchez. He barely even tried to throw the ball down the field. How would that change?
Yeah, the Eagles, if you look at their metrics, I covered in the article, look at their metrics of how they did in vertical passing, throwing deep down the middle of the field. I mean, they were in the bottom third of the league in a number of categories there. Mariota ranked first nationally in deep pass production, which is 16 or more yards according to Stats. Passing yards, the best deep completion percentage, and was second in deep pass touchdowns last year. And when you look at how he was at throwing deep down the middle of the field, he averaged 20 or more yards per attempt down the deep middle, deep left, deep right. I mean, it really didn't matter where he was throwing down the middle of the field. He was getting 20 or more yards per attempt, and that's just a phenomenal figure. Even if that were to drop some coming into the NFL, it would be a huge upgrade. So he's a guy who's not afraid to throw the ball down the middle of the field and has the arm to do so. So I think he'd be an upgrade there, too.
How important is the experience that Mariota comes with?
I think it's one of those things where there's a list of things I call the Parcells rules. It's Bill Parcells' 7 rules of drafting quarterbacks. He's looked at. I talked to Parcells about it a few years ago, and he said that it came from discussions he had with former personnel guys like Bucko Kilroy, and it's a list of rules that if the quarterbacks have all of these in their first-round caliber quarterbacks, they're probably guys who are worth taking a risk on. And there's 7 rules. To be a 3-year starter, you got to play your senior year in college. You got to graduate from college. You got to start 30 games, win 23 games, post a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, complete 60% of your passes. Mariota passes 6 of those, and he actually probably gets a pass on the 7th because even though he didn't play his senior year in college, he's already graduated with a college degree. So he's got all of those are the intangibles besides the football intelligence mentioned earlier that says this is a guy who you can make as a franchise quarterback, and you can put him in there and know he can handle this sort of situation.
Casey Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider here, taking a look at the possibility, or as Casey says, really what the Eagles should do is make a bold move and go up and get a guy like Mariota. How about the people on the other side that say the Eagles have too many problems at other areas, and they have Nick Foles play, fix the other areas?
You can coach up a lot of other areas. You can get a lot of other, if you want, let's say cornerback. The Eagles, people are thinking, they should take a cornerback at 20. According to Scouts, Inc., ESPN's player personnel arm, there's one cornerback in the draft who was as a first-round pick. There are 5 that are a second-round pick. So unless you get that first guy, you're picking a second-round player in the first round, so that's kind of a reach. There's also a lot of quality options in free agency, and there might be an option, depending on what kind of trade the Eagles had to make, maybe they can get one of those cornerbacks in the second round in the draft, too. So, what I'm saying is that you can take these other situations, you can take these other personnel problems that you're having, and you can address them in a variety of other ways. But franchise quarterback, you really, unless you luck out and happen to pick Tom Brady in the 6th round, you pretty much have to go after and get one of these top franchise quarterbacks. They're not going to fall to you, and you can't coach this position up. You got to get that kind of player.
What about the people who think that Winston's just a flat-out better player than Mariota? Why would he not be a good fit for Philly? Not to suggest, he might be the number 1 player, so he might be out of sights anyway, but is Winston a guy that if Philadelphia said, look, we actually like him better than Mariota, is he a better fit?
I'm going to use another Parcells phrase because I was just reading his autobiography, and they were talking at one point about when he was with the Jets and they were considering getting Curtis Martin. And he told this personnel guy at the time, he said, one of the reasons we want Martin is that if your most talented player is your hardest worker and your best person off the field, which Martin was all 3 of those, if he's that kind of, if you've got that combination of skills, that makes every player on your team better. I hear that phrase, I can put Marcus Mariota there. I don't know that I could put Jameis Winston in that same category. So, I'm taking Mariota over Winston.
Casey Joyner is with us here. Obviously, the NFL Combine going on this week. And, are you surprised that both these guys are most likely going to throw at the Combine? For the life of me, Casey, I can't figure out what to gain for these two.
Yeah, it is. Well, if the thing is, if one throws and the other doesn't, it's kind of it's that old arms race thing. You've got to keep up in that stance. Since Winston's having reported shoulder troubles, I think maybe he's throwing just to prove a point. But if you're having any shoulder troubles, maybe you have a pro day a little later down the line when your shoulder's not hurting as much. And in Mariota's case, I think Mariota's got less to lose because the idea is that he's got a strong arm, and people think, okay, Winston's got this cannon. If Mariota goes out there and he has just a strong arm and he can show that he has some touch on some passes, and maybe people thinking he's a system quarterback, so he doesn't have to throw these types of passes. Maybe he can do that. He can close the perceived gap, because I happen to think that arm strength-wise, they both are, I don't want to say they're equal because Winston's arm is probably stronger, but Mariota can do all the things you want to do with the quarterback. He can make all the throws. I think he can close the perception gap, though.
Casey, obviously, at this stage of the game, you make a very strong point for the Eagles to go after that they should break the bank for Mariota. But how realistic is it that with all of the variables, and not to mention there's probably other teams that think that he's probably someone that they would like representing their franchise, how realistic do you think something like this for Chip Kelly? Or is he such a determined guy that it wouldn't shock you at all if they broke the bank for him?
I think that Chip Kelly is aggressive, and I think that one of the reasons they might have put him in charge of personnel is that they've played the percentages for years and they've been very successful, but they haven't broken out to become a Super Bowl team. It just hasn't worked for the Eagles in that sense. And I think they figure we need to take a chance. We need to be more aggressive in some way or another. We can't just play the percentages all the time. We got to go for a move like this. I think Kelly's going to be apt to make the move. The problem for them is that if they don't get the trade to Tampa, people talk about the trade with the Jets. I don't know that Mariota doesn't get taken in 2, 3, 4, or 5. It's possible it could happen. I'm not saying it will, but it's possible that one of those other teams could take him. So if I'm them, I'm on the phone with Tampa and make whatever deal I can. Otherwise, you're waiting till draft day. If Tampa takes, say, Winston first, then you're hoping to get down to 6, and you're probably trying to make a trade with the Jets and see if you can make a blockbuster draft day deal. But if I'm the Eagles, I try and close this thing up before the draft if I can, because this is just the price is only going to go higher as the demand goes up as draft day closes.
Yeah, it seems that everybody seems to link Mariota to Chip Kelly, but are there other teams that you think Mariota could be a good fit for, or is Philadelphia clearly the number one obvious best?
Mariota can be. I think Mariota can be Andrew Luck in his first 3 seasons in Philadelphia if he ends up with Chip Kelly. If you put Mariota on another team, I think he can develop to that point, but I think it's going to be a matter of, let's say he goes to the Jets. They'll do some things with their offense to try to give him Oregon-style, Chip Kelly-style elements in their offense, but they're not going to change their offense to that structure, and it's going to take Mariota time to adjust. So I think he'd be a good fit for any team. He's just not going to be a good year one fit for those teams.
Better fit for most teams, Winston or Mariota?
Winston.
Better player, right?
Better player, more talent. You've got to deal with the off-field issues. You've got to deal with potential, but that's a maturity issue, and there's a lot of immature players in the NFL, so teams are used to dealing with that kind of situation. If you can get past that, he's the better fit in the sense that if you want to put him in a drop-back offense, he's your guy. But if you want to develop a talent, a different skill set that Mariota has, then you're going to have to wait a little bit on Mariota. But as far as being in a drop-back offense, being in a pro-style offense, yeah, Winston would be better for day one for most teams.
Byron Maxwell, you paying him $10 million?
Probably not, because there are a lot of other good cornerbacks in free agency and in the draft. I'm probably leaning away from that just because there's more supply than demand. Yeah,
it looks like obviously his name's going to be linked to the Eagles because of how poor they were at that spot. But $10 million seems to be a pretty steep price there for a guy like Maxwell. Should be interesting. What's your thoughts on Julius Thomas? A guy worth the big bucks, and obviously it seems like Denver's going to have a tough decision on one of those Thomases, and I would assume Julius gets away.
I think Julius, his reputation is stronger than his performance. He's a good tight end, but I think he's a good tight end with Peyton Manning as his quarterback. I think you put him on other teams. I think he's a great tight end with Peyton Manning as his quarterback. But if you put him with other teams, I think he's a good tight end. I don't think he's going to be Antonio Gates in his prime. I think you still have to call him open to an extent. And if that's the case, again, not somebody I think you pay big bucks for.
All right, a lot of NFL stuff happening as the draft getting underway. The process, anyway, with the Combine starting this weekend. You'll be able to keep up with that. We'll figure it all out on Monday. But read Casey's article, the rest of it. Very intriguing stuff. Follow him on Twitter at Joyner TFS. And over at the Insider section, you can check out why he believes in full Philly should break the bank for Marcus Mariota. I'm sure you're getting a ton of response on this article here, as many of the listeners in our Philadelphia region either loving your story or hating your story right now.
It does seem to be it's one side or the other. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground. It's either they thoroughly agree with it or completely disagree with it.
I didn't think people in Philly ever jumped on both sides of the coin. That doesn't seem like us over here. All right, Casey, have a good weekend.
Same to you, man. Appreciate it.